Today we have Stephanie Owen, and she's going to be talking a little bit about her experience with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. She had an internship there, so she's going to be talking about her experience. She completed her undergraduate degree in food and agriculture business with a minor in natural resources and environmental economics at the University of Tennessee. And she is a second-year student in the master's program, right? So without more introduction, I'm going to
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. I'll keep it short and painless. Let's see, so I'm just going to give you a brief little history of the Corps, a little bit about what they do and a little bit about my experience. I was there from around December 8th to, I guess, January 13th, right before classes started. I met them at the STEM job fair after talking with a lady from, it was either ARS or ERS, and she told me with my background I should talk to the Corps of Engineers, so I saw they were going to be there, met them, and that's what led me to this. So, that's not working. It was working a minute ago. Okay, so briefly, the Corps of Engineers kind of started in 1779 around the Revolutionary War. When the war ended, all the engineers left the service, so it kind of fizzled out. So as it is today, it didn't start again until around 1802. From the beginning, they were involved in both civil projects and military-related projects. Some of the first things the Corps of Engineers are known for doing are things like mapping the American West, start building lighthouses, creating ports, channels, harbors, all that kind of cool stuff, and of course providing land defense from European powers. In the 20th century, they kind of became more of the leading federal flood control agency, and also expanded a lot of their civil works activities, and a little bit more so than the military activities. They became a major provider of hydroelectricity and also became the leading provider of recreation for the nation. In 41, they sort of focused back more towards military operations again, so doing things such as building infrastructure for the Army and the Air Force, managing construction for American allies even, and working with NASA and the U.S. Postal Service. In the 60s, we saw the shift towards people being more concerned with the environment, so they started doing more preservation and restoration activities, and now they still do that. They regulate all the U.S. wetlands and also still work with military and help them at the installations, making sure they're not degrading the environment when they get there and when they leave. So the main mission of the Corps of Engineers is to deliver vital public and military engineering services in peace and war to strengthen the nation's security, energize the economy, and reduce risk from disasters. So as you can kind of see over time, they've been involved in a wide array of projects and still are currently. Just a little bit about the Corps. Of course, they're part of the executive branch, subordinate of the Department of Defense and the Department of the Army. Again, they have both military and civil responsibilities. Mainly it's civil now. The division I worked in, we don't have military activities at all. But I know like the Louisville District, they still are involved in military operations. We're headed by the Assistant Secretary of the Army, who's currently Joellen Darcy. And of course, she reports to the President and higher ups, and then the Chief of Engineers, who's Lieutenant General Bostic currently. He reports to her, and he kind of oversees all the civil and military operations that all the different divisions are doing. So this is, again, just a little hierarchy. So you've got your Assistant Secretary of the Army, General Bostic, headquarters, and then there's 9 divisions in the U.S., and then 45 local offices. So as you can see, this is all the different divisions. I'm in this Great Lakes and Ohio Rivers division. Can't really see the color on here, but that's pink. And so here's a closer look of that. So it includes all the Great Lakes area, several states. This is the division I'm in, which goes in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, even up into Kentucky, which was surprising to me. I didn't think I would be working in that many states, I guess. I thought I'd just be in Tennessee. So this is of the Nashville division. General Kaiser is the head of us, so again, he would report to General Bostic and so forth. Let's see. So here's a better look at the Nashville district. All of these, of course, are locks and dams that the Corps regulates, and this is our Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Commander Murphy. So we report to him, and then again back up the chain. Some interesting things about the Corps, or about this division, is we have 10% of the navigable waters that the Corps regulates. So that's quite a bit for, just this small area. So it tells you a lot about what kind of projects we're doing, mostly water-related projects. So some fun facts about the Corps. It's over 35,000 civilian employees, much more than the military personnel that we have. We own 694 dams, maintain 12,000 miles of waterways, the largest provider of outdoor recreation, and the largest owner and operator of hydroelectric power plants, which we're also familiar with TVA. I was kind of surprised by that, but a much bigger nation presence, obviously. So the primary missions of the Corps are navigation, flood risk management, and ecosystem restoration. The Nashville division, at least the projects they currently have, focus mainly on the flood risk management. So I'll be talking more about that later. For navigation, the Corps is responsible for all the waterways essentially that are navigable in the Cumberland, Tennessee rivers, at least for my division. And we export, or we transport, I should say, 73 million tons, and of course that includes agricultural products, your fossil fuels, all that good stuff. And of course we partner with the TVA. You couldn't function in the state if you did not do that. So this is just some pictures of some of the locks and dams. They don't really show up as well on there, but Wilson Lock, Chickamauga, and Cheatham Lock and Dam, so we're responsible for all of those. Ecosystem restoration. Of course, we have to work with a lot of local governments for this sort of thing. And this is mainly focused on, when they're looking at a measure that they might implement in an area, just saying, what can we do to not completely destroy the land here and possibly make it better? So they work on restoring degraded ecosystems, and also issuing permits is probably the biggest thing to keep development from getting out of hand and destroying everything is the big thing they try to work on. So flood risk management, this is a picture of the 2010 flood in Nashville that caused so much damage. And I don't know if all of you have been to downtown Nashville, but that's pretty crazy to me. And of course, it's right there on the river. So I got to actually do some structure inventory of some of these that you can see in this picture, some of these buildings, just kind of looking at what the building's made out of, what's the expected life, what's the content values and that sort of thing, and trying to come up with replacement costs for those. So flood risk management, they look at both residential and non-residential structures, so it includes anything from industrial uses to commercial, people's houses. They look at all of that. And so far, all the projects, of course, have mitigated billions of dollars in damages. So success stories. Some of their secondary missions include hydropower, water supply, recreation, emergency response, and environmental stewardship. So we'll go through some of what the Corps does with that. The Nashville District has 9 hydropower plants, which I was really surprised by, and they produce 914 megawatts per day. It generates a lot of revenue, and that's they do that through making contracts with the Southeastern Power Administration. So this is just some pictures of some of the different inside of the facilities of the hydropower plants. I haven't actually got to tour any of those yet, but I've heard I'll get to actually get in there and kind of dig around and check some of those out. So recreation, the Nashville District is really proud of their recreation activities. I didn't realize the Corps had so many recreation activities throughout the U.S. 370 million people visit these parks a year. So as you can see over here in the right on the box, that's just a little bit about what kind of economic activity that's generating as far as jobs. The Nashville District in 2012 sustained almost 6,500 jobs just from recreation. So that's pretty cool. This is just some of the lakes that some of you all are probably familiar with Dale Hollow. I know that's big for people who scuba dive. And then some of these others just for boating and, you know, all the different activities. Lots of campsites, even. One of the cool things I think the Nashville District does is they have the volunteer clearinghouse, which is just linking volunteers with people or with park rangers to basically make the recreation areas better and keep them up to date. So it's free labor for the Corps. So emergency response, this one I haven't really heard as much about so far. I mean, obviously the Corps is not who you call. If there's a big disaster, you're going to have all the other people do that first. But one cool thing they do is the Nashville District, like in the 2010 flood, they have what they call the Blue Roof Operation. So the Corps goes out and they basically install fiber reinforced, I didn't want to say that wrong, fiber reinforced blue tops that keep extra water from coming in, preventing more damage until people can get their roofs replaced. And that goes for residential and non-residential. So that's pretty cool. And we can't be involved in anything that is declared a natural disaster or a dangerous area by the government. So not too much with emergency response that I've seen thus far, but I do know that they have some teams I've told I could be a part of that when there are natural disasters, mainly it's just a volunteering group. It's Corps employees, but I don't know necessarily that it's like a Corps job, if that makes sense. So this is just a picture of the Operation Blue Roof, so you can see all the houses that they've put those on. Another thing they do is water supply. Of course, that mainly, again, goes with the state and local governments. It's up to them to keep a good water supply for their citizens. But again, they try when they're implementing their projects to not cause any damage to the water supply. And they also do some studies to help local governments decide where they should be storing water or if they need to move their storage and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how the Corps comes into that. I actually had a chance to visit this dam on the right down here, and it's pretty cool. It's got that huge buffer zone on the right, so if there's any flooding or anything, no one's affected by that. So environmental stewardship, again, the Corps is regulating the nation's water since 1890, so for a very long time, and they get the power to do that under the Clean Water Act and also the Rivers and Harbors Act. So they regulate all the structures in, around, under navigable waters, and also make sure dredge material and discharge aren't affecting wetlands and the rivers and streams. So to my internship, again, I worked there for about a month. I'm still doing telework training. The economists I worked with were Mitch Laird and Philip Jones. Mitch is actually already retired, but they brought him back just to kind of help train whoever they were going to hire. And then Philip's actually retiring in a year and a half to 3 years. So it'll just be me. And so I was in the planning division. So I work mainly with project managers from the beginning of like a feasibility study all the way through to construction and implementation and all that sort of thing. It was really cool timing for me because obviously these projects can take years to complete, and I got to come in right when they just started 2 new projects. So I'm kind of getting to see how it starts from the beginning, and they just all sit around in these big meetings and talk about what kind of measures can they implement, what are all the alternatives to consider, whether it be a flood wall or an earthen structure or whatever it might be. So mainly I've seen the feasibility study beginning process is what I've seen. And these were the 2 projects they just started, the Cumberland River, which is in Nashville. After the 2010 flood, of course, a lot of people freaked out and want them to do something about it so it doesn't happen again. That flood was only, I think, a 250-year storm event. So you can imagine if there was a 500-year storm event, it would be a lot worse. And then the Swananoa project, which is in Asheville, North Carolina, which is kind of cool that they go that far east. I forget the name of the college they're working with. It's a liberal arts school over there. But it's interesting because they're actually having conflicts with them now, trying to get them on board with us building like an earthen structure, some kind of structure to help prevent flooding for the school in that area. So it's been interesting. that the Corps tries to go with the National Economic Development Plan, so what's in the best interest of the nation as a whole. But of course, like when you run into situations like this, sometimes they have to go to the locally preferred plan or regionally preferred plan. So when you go to like places like this where there's this liberal arts school and they're completely against, building anything. So you try to kind of reason with them and say, well, what if we make an earthen structure? It's more environmentally friendly, I guess, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting to see what they have to do to get these projects going. The main thing, the economists that are there now, both of them have more or less specialized in flood damage analysis. So again, the primary missions are the flood risk management, the navigation, the hydropower. So I was told they would like me to be more involved with hydropower navigation when I get there. But currently they just mainly do flood damage analysis. So that's what I was working on when I was there as well. FDA is the name of the software they use to do that. It stands for Flood Damage Assessment. And it's just a software the government's put together that basically helps them come up with the benefit cost analysis for all the different projects. Again, another thing I did was I walked downtown to some of the structures that had been flooded and came up with replacement costs for those using the Marshall and Swift method. So that was more of like almost like an appraiser sort of job. Went out and okay, how many stories is this building? What's it made out of? How long has it been here? How much longer do I think it'll be here? What kind of stuff is inside? So just trying to figure out if there was another flood, what would the damage be if these buildings were affected? And I helped build the structure inventories for the Cumberland River project that I was talking about in Nashville. So that all went into that. So again, an economist role of the Corps, most divisions only have like one, maybe two economists, so there's not that many people. So if you're needing help with, your economics problems, you can't just go to the person beside you. You have to contact people in different divisions and talk with them and really look at past studies and that sort of thing that the Corps has done to see what you can and can't do. So whenever they come up with, whenever they get a project, usually it comes from like the Cumberland River, for instance. It's for Nashville Metro, so they want us to do this study. So you go in with Nashville Metro and they pay, you cost share it, they pay for part of it and you pay for part of it. And they basically tell you, we want to prevent a 2010 flood from happening again, what can we do? So the Corps takes the project, a big group of people sit around, engineers, construction, real estate, economists, everybody's sitting around a table and they start thinking, well, what if we could buy out these properties and move these people here and they wouldn't be affected? Or maybe we could build a flood wall to prevent this street from being affected. So they look at all the different possibilities, and from there the economist comes in and working with construction and working with real estate and getting all your costs accumulated, you kind of say, okay, well, if we do this project, we're expected to be able to eliminate this much damage. And if we have this project, well, it's not going to do as well. So we kind of just doing the benefit cost analysis of that again. So to go into the flood damage analysis project, or to do one of those, you have to go ahead and, of course, have your baseline. So your expected future damages if you don't implement anything at all. And usually, currently they're using 2040 as their base year for that. So that you come up with that project, and then of course you have all of your expected if you implement all your different projects. And what goes into these models again is the structure inventory. Each structure you work with hydraulics and hydrology to come up with where they are on a stream. And hydraulics and hydrology will model, what's expected to happen in the different flood events. And so you input all that into the system. You figure out what the first floor elevation is, or essentially where damage would start occurring if there was a flood event. You use that as your base. You assign them each a depreciated replacement value. And again, you get the content value. They already have the depth functions generated, so you find which one would match that structure. Those are from like the 70s, so part of my job will also be updating all those. So that'll be a lot of fun. So they consider, again, I was saying residential, non-residential. They also look at agriculture. That's not something anyone's really been doing currently, so they were excited that I had this agriculture background because they definitely want me to do that. They look at vehicles even. Usually those they don't incorporate that as much because, you know, the damage for that isn't as much. But they also look at the ecosystem and then other social effects. So that would be like the Swananoa project I was talking about in Asheville. Other social effects are they don't want that project. So what do you do for that? And what are the benefits of making the people happy, essentially? So they look at, for each alternative, they look at all the different storm events from a 2-year to a 500-year. And then they're all assigned weights to incorporate the uncertainty and the risk. I haven't really seen what's in that black box yet to know how they come up with those weights, but that'll be something interesting to see because they actually only started incorporating the uncertainty and the risk probably 30 or 40 years ago. Before that, they didn't look at that at all. And again, they try to pick the one that has the highest NED benefit. And sorry if I say acronyms, that was another thing I learned while I was there. They have acronyms for everything. And so some of the projects they look at include structural and non-structural, so anything from a dam in coastal areas to beach nourishment, bridge modifications, and then some non-structural things would be buyouts, raising elevations of houses, which to me was the weirdest thing. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to do a raise, and I was like, what is that? They're just putting houses on stilts, and I was like, you know, this isn't the coast. So that was weird to me. To see houses in eastern Tennessee on stilts, not very close to the river. But so they do dry flood proofing, wet flood proofing. One thing they do also is they help areas come up with kind of like a warning signal. So like when you're in an area and there's tornadoes and you hear the siren, incorporating something like that if there was a big flood so that people know what's going on. And then working with the National Flood Insurance Program to basically incentivize people not to live in certain places. And so what I'm doing now is, again, I'm still doing lots and lots of training for the Corps. I was really surprised by how much they do try to incorporate the Army into the Corps of Engineers. You know, I'm not used to having a commander and lieutenants and majors around and the whole Army structure and how you talk to them and how you don't talk to them. And so it's been very interesting, and I've been surprised by that. They really, for all employees, like the training I'm doing now is just learning about the Army and its customs and traditions and insignias and the stuff they wear on their uniforms. And I have to do things soldiers do, like suicide prevention training and like all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's like a lot of training. So that's been interesting. Some of the upcoming opportunities I've already been told I'll have is, again, they really want me to get into the hydropower and the navigation aspects of the Corps project, so working with other divisions to help them when they have those needs. Charleston, for example, and some of the areas around the Gulf, a lot of those areas, now that they have these mega ships, they're going to have to expand a lot of the ports, so I might get the opportunity to work on doing some of that. Agricultural related stuff, especially in Western Tennessee, that would be a bigger thing. I might get to help with, you know, some of the places on the Mississippi River, what would be the damages of the Mississippi floods to their crop production for the farmers. They're not really, my division's not really doing that currently. In July, I'm going to a training in California for the Continuing Authority program. So that's mainly learning about, you know, if it's like under $250,000 right now, my division can do it with only the consent of my commander. And as it goes up, as the price goes up, you know, figuring out where you get your authority to do projects from and all that sort of stuff. So that will be not very fun, but I guess it's a necessary evil. They've also already told me I might get to go, if I want to detail in Huntington, West Virginia, the Inland Navigation Center of Expertise. So again, they're really trying to push me to learn more about the navigation and the hydropower aspects. So I'd spend 4 months there and come back and share what I learned, I guess. For me, the really cool thing, the part I liked the most about the job is working with people in the different fields. Every day, it's me as an economist and then no other economist. So it's working with civil engineers, hydrology or hydrologists, hydraulics people, biologists, so all kinds of different people. And that's really interesting to see what they think about specific things versus what any of us would think about specific things. And that's pretty much been my experience so far. Again, I wasn't there that long, so still learning a lot, still doing a lot of training every week. I keep in touch with them every 2 weeks. I have a teleconference call and they keep me updated on the projects they're doing. I was really surprised by how many projects they have going at a time. They have so many right now, they're actually hiring more project managers. So the Nashville District is getting a lot of new stuff coming in, which is really exciting. But other than that, that's pretty much been my experience this far. If y'all have any questions? Yeah. The economists that there's now, Mitch, Laird, and Philip, neither of them do GIS, but Mitch kept telling me, you know, if you know how to do GIS or know how to do GIS, that's going to be really big coming up. Like they really want people to start doing more with that. So I've taken a GIS class and I need to refresh on that GIS class. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Like, what's your suggestions for like our student in our department if we want to work in such kind of area like you work now? Like coursework or education or some relationship or something like that?
Yeah, so the big thing for me is, you know, Dr. English has allowed me to go to a lot of conferences when I wanted to and that sort of thing. So when I went to the conference in the Soil and Water Conservation Society conference in Greensboro, you know, again, there weren't a lot of economists there, so I would go to all the sessions and I'd figure out who worked for what company, and then I would, you know, if I knew that company hired economists, I would go stalk them and find them later and talk to them. So it's mainly just a lot of networking because it was actually a lady I met there. I went to her presentation and she was with ARS and she had some cool work. So I went up and I talked to her and she told me, you know, with your background and the project I'm working on is water related. She said, you need to talk to the Corps of Engineers. So I found out they were going to be at the STEM job fair, and I went and I talked to him, and I was the only economist he had talked to all day, and he said, you know, really like that you have this background. I want to get you in there. So I would just say network a lot, like a whole lot. I kept in contact. I still keep in contact with the people I've met at the different conferences through email and LinkedIn, and they will send you jobs, and it's awesome. So just do that. You know, as far as coursework, just take the courses that interest you. It's, the only thing I know to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I guess we have a
Please don't. Bert.
Yeah. Agriculture isn't typically thought of when you think about flood damage.
Mm-hmm.
We have a GIS model that evaluates agricultural flood damage by the Pickwick Dam area. Anyway, just for your information, if crops are flooded for, let's say, 2 days, it might be 25% flood. But if they're flooded for 4 days, it's 100%. Those things are built into that model, just so you know that it exists when you get there. That was just a statement. I guess it's interesting that the Corps has evolved the way it has over time. I was always under the impression that it was initially a military sort of entity that's really going away from the military. In the 30s, they built a lot of projects park areas, things like that. A lot of it happens in the park systems, still through 30s and by the pool, or at least the swimming floor. But they've gone away from that, haven't they?
Yeah, mainly. I mean, again, like Nashville District doesn't do any military operations. Like, you have the opportunity if you want to. Like, I could take temporary assignments in the Middle East if I wanted to, working with the military operations, and they give you the opportunity to do things like that. And if you want to be involved with the military, basically they'll let you, I guess is what I'm saying. But the Nashville District, we don't have any military operation projects. We do have people in the military who are like on broadening assignments with the Corps. While I was there, there was a lieutenant that's working as an engineer, and then there was also a lieutenant in, maybe he was in construction, I think, but they let them come in and kind of work with the civilians, but other than that, it's mainly just civilians answering to the Army. But I know, again, like some of the places in Kentucky, they still do military operations. And I don't know if that's just because they're close to the fort or what, because I mean, we're close to Fort Campbell, so I kind of thought we would have some of that, but we don't. Yeah, and when it did start out, when the Corps started out, it was military. You know, in the Revolutionary War, they kind of just got all those engineers together. And I think it just kind of evolved. I don't really know why that happened, other than probably just because the military has so many other people doing that stuff for them that they need. I don't know. But yeah, I was surprised too, because I was like, well, I was surprised more that they still do incorporate the military stuff so much. I thought it would just be like a normal job. But now I'd have to talk to commanders and whatnot, so.
There are no more questions, just leave them alone.